The day before my sister's wedding, the one I spent $40,000 on, I saw a message pop up on my girlfriend's phone from my sister's fiance. Can't wait to see you. I opened their chat and just froze. Turned out he was her ex, and they'd been secretly seeing each other the whole time. I didn't say a word to anyone, but during the ceremony, I walked up and displayed all their messages and photos on the screen. After what happened next, the groom was arrested, and my girlfriend is now crying at my door, begging me for another chance. So here's the thing about being the older brother. Sometimes you end up being way more than just a sibling. When our parents passed away in a car accident 6 years ago, I became everything to my little sister Kelly. I was her guardian, her parent figure, her best friend, and honestly, the only family she had left. She was barely 19 back then, still figuring out who she was, and I was 24, barely keeping my own life together while trying to raise a teenager who just lost everything. Fast forward to last year, and Kelly met Josh at some coffee shop downtown. You know the type? Good-looking guy, charming smile, worked in finance, drove a nice car. He seemed perfect for her. They dated for about 18 months before he popped the question, and I gotta say, I was genuinely happy for her. Josh seemed like a solid dude. He was attentive, remembered little details about her, showed up to family dinners, asked me about my day. All the green flags you'd want for your sister's future husband. Kelly had been dreaming about her wedding since she was a little kid. I remember her showing me these scrapbooks she made when she was like 10 years old, filled with pictures of beach ceremonies and white dresses and flowers everywhere. After Mom and Dad died, she'd sometimes pull out those old books and cry, thinking she'd never get that perfect day without them there to see it. So when Josh proposed, I made her a promise. I was going to give her the wedding she always dreamed about, no matter what it cost. And man, did it cost. I'm talking nearly $40,000 of my savings. The venue alone was $15,000, this gorgeous resort right on the Pacific coast. Exactly what she wanted. Then there was the catering, the photographer, the videographer, the flowers, the DJ, the whole 9 yards. I even paid for her dress, this stunning thing that cost $3,000 but made her look like a princess. My bank account was screaming, but every time I saw her face light up during the planning, I knew it was worth it. My girlfriend Amanda was incredible through the whole process. She and Kelly became really close during those months of wedding prep. They'd spend hours together picking out centerpieces, tasting cakes, addressing invitations. Sometimes I'd come home and find them sprawled out on my living room floor surrounded by fabric samples and Pinterest printouts, laughing about something. It made me happy, you know? Seeing my two favorite people getting along so well. Amanda would stay up late helping Kelly with DIY decorations, drove her to dress fittings when I had to work, even threw her an amazing bachelorette party in Vegas. The wedding was set for a Saturday in June. Perfect weather, perfect location, perfect everything. Kelly had lost some weight from the stress of planning, but she seemed genuinely excited. Josh was doing his part too, dealing with his side of the family, booking the honeymoon to Bali, handling the marriage license paperwork. From the outside, everything looked like it was coming together beautifully. About 2 weeks before the big day, we all drove down to the resort to do a final walkthrough. The place was even more beautiful than the pictures. You could hear the waves crashing from the ceremony site, and the sunset view was absolutely insane. Kelly cried happy tears. Amanda hugged her. Josh kissed her forehead. I stood there thinking about how proud Mom and Dad would have been, how this was exactly the kind of moment they would have wanted to see. The week before the wedding was chaos. Last-minute RSVPs, final payments, picking up the tuxes, making sure the out-of-town guests had their hotel info. Amanda basically moved into my place to help coordinate everything. She was messaging vendors, confirming times, keeping Kelly calm when she started freaking out about tiny details. I remember thinking I was lucky to have her. She was organized, thoughtful, and seemed to genuinely care about making this day perfect for my sister. We all checked into the resort on Friday afternoon, the day before the ceremony. The wedding party got rooms at a discounted rate, and the place was buzzing with excitement. Kelly's friends were already at the pool, Josh's buddies were at the bar, and everything felt celebratory. That night we had the rehearsal dinner, Nothing too fancy, just close family and the wedding party. Josh gave a speech about how lucky he was to find Kelly, how he couldn't wait to spend his life with her. Kelly looked at him like he hung the moon. Amanda and I headed back to our room around 11. We were exhausted from the drive and all the running around. She fell asleep almost immediately, but I stayed up a bit longer going through the timeline for the next day in my head. The ceremony was at 4, cocktail hour at 5:30, reception at 7. I had to give a toast as the man of honor, basically the male version of maid of honor, since Kelly didn't have any sisters. I'd been working on that speech for weeks, try to find the right words to express how much she meant to me and how happy I was for her. I finally crashed around midnight, feeling good about everything. Nervous, sure, but in that normal pre-wedding way. I had no idea that in less than 8 hours, I'd discover something that would blow up not just a wedding, but pretty much every relationship I cared about. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss, you know? Because that night, sleeping next to Amanda, thinking about my sister's happiness, believing Josh was a good guy, that was probably the last peaceful moment I'd have for a very long time. The thing about betrayal is you never see it coming from the people you trust most. You expect strangers to hurt you, maybe acquaintances or co-workers. But the people closest to you, the ones who know all your secrets, who've seen you at your worst, who you'd literally die for, you never think they're capable of destroying you. And that's exactly what makes it so much worse when they do. I woke up around 6:30 Saturday morning. The sun was barely up, and Amanda was still sleeping soundly beside me. My phone was on the nightstand, and I reached for it out of habit. You know how it is. First thing everyone does is check their phone. I was going to look at the weather, maybe check if any last-minute messages came through about the wedding. Just a normal morning routine. Except what I found on that phone would turn the entire day into a nightmare that nobody saw coming. I grabbed my phone expecting to see maybe some text from Kelly or the wedding coordinator, maybe a weather update. Instead, the screen lit up with Amanda's phone, lying right next to mine on the nightstand. She must have put it there when she plugged it in to charge. The thing was buzzing with notification, and the preview was right there on the lock screen where anyone could see it. The message was from Josh, my future brother-in-law Josh, and it said something that made my stomach drop, like I was on a roller coaster that just went off the rails. Can't wait to see you before the ceremony, followed by a heart emoji. I just stared at that screen, my brain trying to process what I was reading. Maybe it was innocent, right? Maybe he just meant he was excited to see everyone before the wedding. But that heart emoji, though, that didn't feel like something you send to your fiance's brother's girlfriend in a casual way. My hands were shaking as I looked over at Amanda. She was still sleeping, her face peaceful, hair spread across the pillow. Every instinct in me wanted to shake her awake and demand answers right then and there. But something stopped me. Maybe it was a wedding day. Maybe it was the fact that Kelly was sleeping just a few rooms away about to marry this guy. I needed to know more before I did anything. I needed evidence, not just one suspicious text. I picked up Amanda's phone as quietly as I could. No passcode. She'd always said she had nothing to hide from me. That thought felt like acid in my throat now. I unlocked it and opened her messages with Josh, and what I found made my entire world collapse. Hundreds of texts going back months. Months. While Amanda was supposedly helping Kelly pick out flowers and addressing invitations, she was messaging Josh things that made me physically sick. The recent messages were planning meetups before the ceremony, talking about sneaking away during the reception, reminiscing about times they'd been together. Together. My girlfriend and my sister's fiance had been sleeping together, and I'd been completely clueless. I scrolled further up, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake Amanda up. There were photos, hotel rooms, intimate situations, timestamps from days I remembered clearly. One photo was from 3 days ago. 3 days ago when Amanda told me she was helping Kelly with a last-minute bridesmaid emergency. The image showed her in some luxury hotel room with Josh, both barely dressed, his arm around her waist. The caption said just like old times. I had to cover my mouth to keep from making a sound. Another message from Josh read, "You're still mine, aren't you?" Amanda's response was always have been, always will be. I sat there on the edge of the bed, trying to control my breathing. My mind was racing through every moment of the past few months, recontextualizing everything. All those times Amanda volunteered to help with wedding stuff. All those hours she spent with Kelly becoming her friend. She was playing my sister the entire time. And Josh, standing there at family dinners, shaking my hand, thanking me for being so welcoming. He was lying to everyone's face. The worst part was realizing they must have known each other before Kelly even met Josh. The messages referenced old times, mentioned things from years ago. Amanda had watched my sister fall in love with her ex-boyfriend or whatever Josh was to her, and never said a word. She'd encouraged a relationship, helped plan the wedding, pretended to be Kelly's friend, all while maintaining this secret affair. I looked at Amanda sleeping beside me, this person I thought I knew, and felt nothing but disgust. 2 years we'd been together. 2 years of her lying to my face every single day. How many times had she been with Josh and then come home to me? How many times had she kissed me with the same mouth that had been on him? The thought made me want to throw up right there. But I couldn't wake her up. Not yet. If I confronted Amanda now, she'd warn Josh. They'd come up with some story together, or Josh would run, or they'd find a way to manipulate Kelly into forgiving him. No, I needed to tell Kelly first. She deserved to know before anyone else. This was her wedding day, her life that was about to be ruined, and she had the right to decide how to handle it. I took screenshots of everything on Amanda's phone. The messages, the photos, the hotel booking confirmations that were in her email. I sent them all to myself and then deleted the sent messages from her phone, so she wouldn't know I'd found out. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone twice, but I managed to cover my tracks. I put her phone back exactly where it had been on the nightstand. Amanda stirred slightly but didn't wake up. I looked at her one more time, the stranger wearing my girlfriend's face, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Whatever we'd had was dead now. There was no coming back from this, no explanation that would make it okay, no forgiveness possible. But that didn't matter right now. Right now, I needed to get to Kelly before she walked down that aisle to marry a man who'd been cheating on her for months. I got dressed as quietly as possible, grabbed my phone with all the evidence, and slipped out of the room. The hallway was empty. Most guests were still sleeping since the ceremony wasn't until 4. I stood outside Kelly's door for a long moment, trying to figure out how to tell her. How do you destroy your little sister's world on what's supposed to be the happiest day of her life? How do you tell her that her fiancé and her friend have been betraying her together? I thought about our parents, about what they would want me to do. Dad always said the truth hurts, but lies destroy. Mom told us that family protects family no matter what, even when it's hard. Kelly deserved the truth. Even if it meant destroying this day she dreamed about since childhood, even if it meant watching her heart break. She deserved to know what kind of man she was about to legally bind herself to. I knocked on her door softly. She answered almost immediately, already awake, probably too excited and nervous to sleep. She was in her pajamas with her hair in rollers, face mask on, looking happy and anxious and beautiful. The moment she saw my expression, her smile disappeared. She asked me what was wrong. Her voice suddenly worried, and I realized I had tears running down my face. I walked into her room and closed the door behind me. Kelly was getting scared now, asking if someone got hurt, if there was an emergency. I sat down on her bed and pulled out my phone, my hand still shaking. I told her I needed to show her something, that I was so sorry, that I wished I didn't have to do this. She sat down next to me, confused and frightened, and I showed her the screenshots, every single one of them. Kelly's face went through this horrible progression, confusion, then understanding, then complete devastation. She looked at the messages, the photos, the timeline of betrayal that had been happening right under both our noses while we planned her wedding. Her hands started trembling as she scrolled through the evidence. She saw the hotel photos from 3 days ago, read the messages about meeting before the ceremony, saw Josh calling Amanda his. I expected her to break down immediately, to start crying or screaming or both. But instead, Kelly went completely silent. She handed my phone back to me carefully, stood up, and walked to the window overlooking the ocean where she was supposed to get married in less than 10 hours. She just stood there staring out at the water, not moving, not speaking, barely even breathing. The silence in that room was absolutely deafening, and I had no idea what she was thinking. Kelly stood at that window for what felt like forever, just staring out at the ocean. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to your little sister when you just destroyed her entire world? I started apologizing, telling her I was sorry, that I wished there was a way to make this easier, that I'd understand if she hated me for showing her this on her wedding day. She didn't respond. She just kept staring out that window like she was somewhere else entirely. Then she turned around, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. It wasn't just sadness or anger. It was this cold, calculated look that honestly scared me a little. She walked over and sat down next to me on the bed, took my phone, and started scrolling through the screenshots again. This time she was reading them carefully, taking in every detail, studying the timestamps. Her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was steady, controlled, nothing like I expected. She told me she wasn't canceling the wedding. I thought I heard her wrong at first. She repeated it. She wasn't canceling anything. All those guests were already here. The venue was paid for. Everything was set up. She said she wanted to go through with the day exactly as planned, at least until the reception. I tried to argue with her, told her she didn't have to do this, that we could send everyone home and deal with Josh privately. But Kelly had already formed a complete plan in her head. She wanted Josh to think everything was normal. She wanted him to go through the entire day believing he was getting away with it, believing he was about to marry her while keeping Amanda on the side. And then, at the reception during the toast, she wanted me to expose everything in front of every single person there. She wanted witnesses. She wanted him humiliated the way he'd humiliated her. The plan made me uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. It felt cruel, even though Josh absolutely deserved it. But Kelly was insistent. She told me she'd actually suspected something for a while now. Little things she'd noticed and brushed off. Looks between Amanda and Josh that lasted too long. Inside jokes she wasn't part of. Times when they both disappear at parties and come back separately. She convinced herself she was being paranoid, that wedding stress was making her see things that weren't there. She mentioned this one incident from 2 months ago that suddenly made sense now. She'd surprised Josh at his apartment and found Amanda there. They'd said Amanda was getting Josh's opinion on a birthday gift for me, which seemed odd but plausible. Josh had been acting strange, though, almost jumpy, and Amanda had left really quickly. Kelly said she felt physically sick that day but talked herself out of suspecting anything, because how could her fiancé and her friend do that to her? The more Kelly talked, the more I understood she needed this revenge. She needed to take back some power in a situation where she had absolutely none. Josh and Amanda had stolen months from her. Months of her life spent planning a future that was built on lies. If she wanted to return the favor for one day, to let Josh get dressed in his tux, smile for photos, stand at that altar thinking he was winning, only to have it all crash down publicly. I wasn't going to stop her. We spent the next hour planning every detail. I'd give my toast as man of honor right after dinner, which was already scheduled. Instead of the speech I prepared about childhood memories and happiness, I'd connect my phone to the venue's projection system and show everyone the evidence. The same screen that was supposed to display cute photos of Kelly and Josh's relationship would instead show his affair with Amanda. Kelly made me promise not to tell anyone else, especially not Amanda or Josh. She wanted them both at the wedding, wanted them to be completely blindsided in front of all their friends and family. I asked her if she was sure she could handle actually going through with the ceremony, standing at that altar with Josh, saying vows she knew were meaningless. She said she'd apparently been living a lie for months already. What was a few more hours? Around 8:30, I went back to my room. Amanda was awake now, getting ready in the bathroom. She came out when she heard me, smiling, asking where I'd been. I told her I'd gone for a walk on the beach to clear my head before the ceremony, that I was nervous about my toast. She bought it completely, came over and hugged me, told me I'd do great. Having her touch me knowing what I knew made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to act normal. Amanda talked about how excited she was for Kelly, how beautiful the day was going to be, how Josh was such a good guy. Every word out of her mouth was a lie, and she delivered them so easily. I wondered how many times she'd lied to my face over the past months. How many times had she come home from being with Josh and kissed me hello like nothing was wrong? The thought made me feel sick, but I kept my expression neutral. She asked if Kelly seemed nervous this morning. I said Kelly was doing fine, just excited and a little overwhelmed. Amanda said she'd texted Kelly offering to come help her get ready, but Kelly had said she had enough bridesmaids helping. Amanda seemed slightly hurt by that, like she couldn't understand why Kelly wouldn't want her there. The obliviousness was almost impressive. She genuinely thought she was Kelly's friend while actively sleeping with her fiancé. I took a shower to get away from Amanda for a bit, stood under the hot water trying to calm myself down. Tonight was going to be brutal. Amanda would be exposed in front of everyone she knew, everyone I knew. My relationship would end publicly and messily. But that didn't matter compared to what Kelly was going through. She was about to stand up there and marry someone who'd been betraying her, all so she could expose him later. That took a kind of strength I wasn't sure I had. Around 10, Josh texted me asking if I wanted to grab breakfast with him and the groomsmen. I agreed, needing to play my part convincingly. Amanda said she was going to get her hair and makeup done with some of the other guests. I watched her leave, this woman I'd spent 2 years with, and felt absolutely nothing for her anymore. Whatever feelings, I'd have died the moment I saw those messages. Breakfast with Josh was torture. He seemed completely relaxed, laughing with his buddies, making jokes about married life. His best man kept ribbing him about losing his freedom, and Josh would play along, but then say something about how lucky he was to find Kelly, how she was the best thing that ever happened to him. The lies came out so smoothly. I wondered if he practiced them, or if dishonesty just came naturally to him at this point. At one point, Josh put his hand on my shoulder and thanked me for everything I'd done to make this wedding happen. He said he knew how much I'd spent, how much effort I'd put in, and that he'd never forget it. He said he'd spent his whole life taking care of Kelly and making sure she was happy. I had to physically stop myself from punching him right there. Instead, I just smiled and said I was counting on him to treat her right. After breakfast, I went back to get ready. The ceremony was at 4, which meant I had about 4 more hours of pretending everything was fine. For hours of watching Josh and Amanda play their parts while Kelly got dressed in that beautiful wedding gown for a ceremony that was really just an elaborate setup for the exposure later. The wait was going to be agonizing, but Kelly had made her choice, and I was going to support her no matter what. Around 2 in the afternoon, guests started arriving at the ceremony site. I stood there in my tux watching people take their seats, completely unaware of what was coming. Amanda showed up looking beautiful in her dress, came over and kissed me, told me I looked handsome. I kissed her back, playing the loving boyfriend role one last time. In a few hours, everyone here would know what she really was. I saw Josh up near the altar, looking nervous in that normal groom way. He kept adjusting his tie, checking his watch, scanning the crowd. At one point his eyes landed on Amanda, and they shared this quick look. Barely a second, but I saw it. A small smile, a tiny nod. They thought they were being subtle. They thought they were getting away with it. In just a few hours, they'd learn exactly how wrong they were. The ceremony itself was surreal. I stood up there as man of honor, while Kelly walked down the aisle alone. No dad to give her away. Just her in that beautiful dress, walking toward a man who'd been lying to her for months. She looked stunning, and if you didn't know better, you'd think she was genuinely happy. Her smile was perfect, her steps measured and graceful. I caught her eye once, and she gave me this tiny nod, like she was confirming she was still going through with our plan. Josh looked nervous, but in that normal groom way. He was fidgeting with his cufflinks, shifting his weight from foot to foot. When Kelly reached him, he took her hands, and I swear he had tears in his eyes. The officiant started talking about love and commitment and forever, and I wanted to laugh at how absurd it all was. This man was promising to forsake all others while he'd been sleeping with my girlfriend, probably that very morning for all I knew. Amanda was sitting in the 3rd row, dabbing at her eyes like she was moved by the ceremony. A few times she looked at Josh with this expression I couldn't quite read. Was it longing? Regret? Fear? I couldn't tell and honestly didn't care. I was too focused on keeping myself together, playing my part until the right moment. Kelly had made me promise to let the ceremony happen, to let them say their vows, to let everyone think it was real before we dropped the bomb. The ceremony lasted about 30 minutes. Josh and Kelly exchanged rings, said their I do's, and kissed while everyone clapped and cheered. Technically, they were married now, but Kelly had already told me she was planning to file for annulment first thing Monday morning. She was willing to be legally married to him for less than 48 hours if it meant executing her plan perfectly. The dedication was honestly impressive, even if it scared me a little. Cocktail hour was on a terrace overlooking the ocean. Guests mingled, drank champagne, ate fancy appetizers. I stayed close to Kelly, playing the protective brother role, while she worked the room like nothing was wrong. She was gracious to every guest, thanking them for coming, posing for photos, laughing at jokes. Josh was doing the same, one arm around her waist, looking like the happiest man alive. I caught him looking at Amanda once. Just a quick glance, and the smile on his face changed for just a second into something else. Amanda tried to approach me during cocktail hour, but I avoided her. I saw her talking to Kelly at one point, and my heart nearly stopped, worried she was confessing or warning her somehow. But Kelly just smiled and hugged her, thanked her for all her help at the wedding. Amanda looked relieved again, still thinking she'd gotten away with it. The delusion was almost sad. Did she really think I'd just keep the secret? Did she think I'd choose her over my own sister? Dinner was served around 6:30. The reception hall was decorated beautifully. String lights, candles, more flowers, round tables with fancy place settings. Kelly and Josh sat at the sweetheart table, looking like a picture-perfect couple. The meal was actually really good, some kind of fancy chicken and fish option, but I could barely eat. My stomach was in knots thinking about what was coming. I'd set up Amanda's phone with the venue coordinator earlier, told him there was a change to the slideshow presentation for the toasts. The DJ announced it was time for speeches after dinner was cleared. First up was Josh's best man, who told some funny stories about their college days, made jokes about Josh finally settling down, raised a glass to the happy couple. Everyone laughed and clapped. Then it was my turn. The DJ called me up as a man of honor, and I walked the microphone with Amanda's phone in my pocket and my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Kelly looked at me from her table. Her expression was calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were gripping the edge of the table. Josh was smiling, probably expecting some embarrassing childhood story about Kelly. Amanda was watching me nervously from her table. She knew I was angry, but she had no idea what was about to happen. Nobody did except Kelly and me. I started by saying I wanted to tell a story about betrayal and lies. The room got quiet, people probably thinking I was going for some kind of meaningful metaphor. I said I wanted to talk about two people who made promises they never intended to keep, who looked people in the eye and lied without hesitation. The energy in the room was shifting now. Guests were looking confused. Kelly's grip on the table was tighter. Then I pulled out Amanda's phone and told the tech guy to connect it to the projector. The screen behind me lit up with the text messages between Josh and Amanda. The first thing that appeared was "Can't wait to see you before the ceremony" with that heart emoji. Someone in the crowd gasped. Josh's face went from confused to pale to absolutely white in about 2 seconds. Amanda stood up from her table, knocking over her wine glass. I scrolled to the next messages. "You're still mine, aren't you? Always have been, always will be." The photos came next, Josh and Amanda together in that hotel room. The one from 3 days ago. The timestamp was visible. Some of the older guests covered their mouths. Kelly's bridesmaids were staring at the screen in shock. Josh's mom let out this sound like a wounded animal. The whole room was frozen, everyone trying to process what they were seeing. Josh suddenly snapped out of his shock and jumped up from the table. He was yelling that it wasn't real, that I'd doctored the photos somehow, that this was photoshopped. His voice was getting louder and more desperate. I just stood there calmly at the microphone and said if it was fake, then why was his phone number the one that booked that hotel room? I'd checked that morning. The reservation confirmation was in Amanda's email, paid for with Josh's credit card. Kelly finally stood up. She hadn't said anything during my whole speech, just sat there watching the room react. Now she looked directly at Josh with this expression of pure contempt. She told him he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Her voice was steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. She said she'd known something was wrong for months, that her gut had been telling her he was lying, and she'd ignored it because she wanted to believe people weren't capable of being that cruel. Josh started moving toward Kelly, and I could see this switch flip in him. He went from defensive to aggressive, reaching for her arm, saying they needed to talk privately, that this was all a misunderstanding. His voice had this edge to it that made my protective instincts kick in immediately. I was already moving, getting between them before he could touch her. I pushed him back, told him to back off. He took a swing at me, actually tried to punch me at his own wedding reception. I ducked, and his fist connected with one of the groomsmen behind me. Total chaos broke out then. Josh was screaming, try and get to me, or Kelly, or both of us. His groomsmen were trying to hold him back. Guests were on their feet, some filming on their phones, others trying to leave. Amanda was sobbing at her table, surrounded by Kelly's bridesmaids who were giving her death glares. Kelly just stood there in the middle of it all, watching everything fall apart with a strange, calm expression. Someone had called hotel security and the police. Within minutes, there were officers in the reception hall trying to figure out what was happening. Josh was still yelling, saying I'd ruined his life, that I'd pay for this. The irony of him thinking he was a victim would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. One of the officers was trying to calm him down, asking what was going on. Multiple guests started explaining, pointing at the screen that was still showing evidence of the affair. The officers ended up escorting Josh out when he wouldn't calm down. He was threatening me, threatening Kelly, completely unhinged. They didn't arrest him right away, but told him he needed to leave the property. His family followed, his mother crying, his father looking disgusted. The room slowly emptied as guests figured out there wasn't going to be any more celebration. Some of them came up to Kelly and hugged her, told her they were sorry, that Josh didn't deserve her. She accepted their sympathy with grace, still playing her part perfectly. I looked for Amanda in the chaos, but she disappeared. Her table was empty, wine still spilled across the white tablecloth, her purse gone. Part of me wondered if she'd try to follow Josh, if they'd run off together now that everything was exposed. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. She could do whatever she wanted. She was no longer my problem, no longer my concern. My only priority was making sure Kelly was okay after everything that had just happened. The reception hall cleared out within an hour. The venue staff started cleaning up while Kelly and I just sat at the sweetheart table in silence, surrounded by untouched wedding cake and wilting centerpieces. She was still in her wedding dress. I was still in my tux, and we were watching the life we'd planned for this day get dismantled piece by piece. At some point, she reached over and grabbed my hand, squeezed it tight, and told me she was glad I'd shown her the truth, even if it hurt, even if it destroyed everything. She said she was grateful. We ended up back in her hotel room around 9 that night. Some of her bridesmaids came by to check on her, brought her out of that dress and into comfortable clothes, ordered room service that nobody ate. They were furious on her behalf, saying they'd always thought something was off about Josh, that Amanda had seemed too interested in wedding details. Hindsight is 20/20 like that. Everyone suddenly remembered little red flags they'd ignored at the time. Kelly's phone was blowing up with messages. Josh was texting and calling from different numbers, alternating between apologizing and blaming me for ruining everything. His family was calling too, some of them angry at Kelly for humiliating their son publicly, others apologizing for his behavior. She turned her phone off eventually, said she couldn't deal with any of them right now. All she wanted was to sleep and wake up hoping this was all a nightmare. I stayed with Kelly that night, slept on the couch in her room while she took the bed. Around 3 a.m, I heard her crying, not the loud, dramatic crying you see in movies, but this quiet, broken sound that was somehow worse. I went over and sat on the edge of her bed, didn't say anything, just let her cry on my shoulder like she used to when we were kids, and she'd had a bad day at school. Except this wasn't a bad day. This was her entire future falling apart. The next morning, Sunday, we started dealing with the aftermath. Kelly called a lawyer friend and started the annulment process. In California, you can get an annulment for fraud, and lie about fidelity definitely qualified. The lawyer said it would be pretty straightforward given the circumstances and the very public evidence of Josh's affair. Kelly seemed relieved to have a concrete action to take, something to focus on besides emotional wreckage. I spent Sunday morning dealing with the venue, trying to figure out refunds for the parts of the reception that didn't happen. The catering company was understanding, but said they couldn't refund food that was already prepared. The DJ wanted his full payment since he'd been there for the contracted time. The photographer had captured everything including the chaos, and weirdly enough, Kelly wanted those photos. She said she wanted documentation of exactly what kind of person Josh was in case his family tried to rewrite history later. Around noon, there was a knock on Kelly's hotel room door. We weren't expecting anyone, and for a second I thought it might be Josh coming back to cause more trouble. Instead, when I opened it, Amanda was standing there looking absolutely wrecked. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hair was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. She started begging to talk to me, saying she needed to explain everything, that there were things I didn't understand. Kelly appeared behind me, still in her pajamas, and told Amanda to leave. Amanda tried to talk to her instead, apologizing, saying she never meant to hurt anyone, that things just got complicated. Kelly laughed at that, this bitter, harsh sound I'd never heard from her before. She told Amanda that complicated was forgetting someone's birthday or double booking plans. Sleeping with your friend's fiancé for months wasn't complicated. It was calculated and cruel and unforgivable. Amanda turned her attention back to me, tears streaming down her face. She said she'd made a terrible mistake, that Josh had been her ex-boyfriend from years ago, that when Kelly met him she didn't know how to tell anyone. She claimed they'd run into each other at Kelly's engagement party, and old feelings came back, that it started as just talking and spiraled out of control, like that somehow made it better. Knowing she'd been lying from the very first moment Kelly introduced Josh as her fiancé. I asked Amanda why she'd stayed with me if she was in love with Josh. She said she did love me, that Josh was just this toxic thing she couldn't quit, that she tried to end it multiple times, but he kept pulling her back in. The excuses were endless. She wasn't taking any real responsibility, just making it sound like she was some helpless victim of circumstances instead of someone who'd actively chosen to betray both me and Kelly for months. Kelly had heard enough. She told Amanda that she'd already lost her fiancé, her wedding, and her ability to trust people, and she wasn't going to stand there listening to excuses too. She said Amanda needed to leave and never contact either of us again. Amanda tried one more time to reach for me, to get me to look at her, to acknowledge that what we'd had was real even if she'd ruined it. I just stepped back and told her I didn't know her anymore. Amanda stood there for a moment, looking between Kelly and me like she was waiting for one of us to change our minds. When neither of us said anything else, she finally left. I watched her walk down that hotel hallway, probably off to find Josh, or maybe just to go home and deal with the mess she created. Part of me felt sad. 2 years of my life had been spent with someone who'd been lying the whole time. But mostly I just felt relieved that it was over. Kelly and I checked out of the resort Monday morning. The drive home was quiet, both of us exhausted and emotionally drained. She dozed off in the passenger seat while I drove, and I kept thinking about how different this trip was supposed to be. We were supposed to be saying goodbye to her before she left for her honeymoon to Bali, supposed to be happy and celebrating. Instead, we were driving home in silence, dealing with trauma and betrayal. The next few weeks were rough. Kelly filed the annulment papers, blocked Josh and his entire family on everything, and started therapy to process the betrayal. She moved in with me temporarily, since her apartment had too many memories of Josh. We'd spend evenings watching bad TV shows and eating takeout, not really talking about what happened, but just being there for each other like we'd always been since our parents died. Josh tried to reach out through mutual friends a few times. He wanted to apologize, wanted to explain, wanted another chance. Kelly shut it down every time. She was done with him, done with his lies, done with giving him access to her emotions. The annulment went through surprisingly quickly, about 6 weeks. The lawyer said having such clear evidence of fraud made the judge's decision easy. Kelly framed the annulment decree and hung it in her bathroom as a reminder of her strength. I ran into Amanda once about 2 months later at a grocery store. She tried to approach me, started to say something, but I just walked away. There was nothing she could say that I wanted to hear. I'd started dating someone new by then, taking it slow, being more careful about trust. My new girlfriend knew the whole story and said she'd never do anything to hurt me like that. Time would tell that was true, but I was willing to give it a chance. Kelly started dating again eventually too, though she was understandably cautious. She made guys meet me early on, joked that they needed my approval before anything got serious. We were closer than ever after everything that happened. Trauma has a way of either destroying relationships or making them unbreakable. In our case, it was definitely the latter. We'd survived our parents' death, and now we'd survived this. We could survive anything together. Looking back now, about a year later, Kelly says she's grateful it happened when it did rather than after they'd been married for years or had kids. She says if I hadn't found those messages, she might have lived in ignorance for who knows how long, maybe forever. The wedding was expensive. The pain was brutal. But finding out the truth saved her from a lifetime of lies. She considers the $40,000 I spent on that wedding the best investment I ever made because it exposed Josh for who he really was. As for Josh and Amanda, I heard through mutual friends that they tried to make a relationship work after everything fell apart. Apparently, it lasted about 3 months before they realized that a relationship built on lies and betrayal doesn't suddenly become healthy just because the secret's out. They were both so used to the excitement of sneaking around that actual normal dating was boring for them. They ended things badly. Both moved to different cities. And as far as I know, neither of them has tried to contact Kelly or me since. The whole experience taught me a lot about trust, about family, about the importance of gut instincts. Kelly had felt something was wrong for months, but ignored it because she wanted to believe in the best of people. I trusted Amanda completely because I thought love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt. We were both wrong, but we learned. Now we're more careful but not cynical, more aware but not paranoid. We protect each other fiercely because we're all we've got, and that's enough. So yeah, that's the story of how I spent 40 grand on a wedding that lasted about 4 hours before I exposed the groom for cheating with my girlfriend. Some people have told me I should have handled it differently. Maybe talked to Josh privately or told Kelly without the public spectacle. But honestly, I don't regret any of it. Josh and Amanda humiliated Kelly with their betrayal. They deserve to be humiliated in return. And Kelly got closure in a way that most people never do. She got to take back her power, control the narrative, and show everyone exactly who they really were. People ask Kelly sometimes if she regrets having the wedding at all, if she wishes she just called it off when I told her that morning. She always says no. She says going through with it, standing at that altar knowing what she knew, watching it all play out exactly as she planned, that gave her power. It turned her from a victim into someone who chose how her story ended. And honestly, I respect that more than anything. The $40,000 I spent on that wedding wasn't wasted. It bought Kelly the truth, saved her from years of lies, and showed her exactly who deserved to be in her life. Would I have preferred to spend that money on an actual happy wedding? Of course. But given the alternative, Kelly marrying Josh and finding out about the affair after they had kids or a mortgage or 10 years of marriage, I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat. Thanks for sticking with this story until the end. I know it was a lot to take in. Trust me, living through it was even crazier. I'd love to hear what you guys think about how Kelly and I handled everything. Would you have done something different? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story or found helpful in any way, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means everything and helps me keep sharing these real-life experiences. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.